Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our regularly scheduled meeting of the Zoning Advisory Commission. It is May the 7th, 2025. I call this meeting to order. Jason, would you call roll?
Here. Here.
Here.
Morton is excused. Russell?
Here.
And Carol.
Okay. Let's see, can we confirm we are in compliance with the Iowa Open Meetings Law? All right, very good. Okay, in front of us are our meeting minutes from April the 2nd, 2025. I'll hear any modifications, amendments, or entertain a motion for approval as submitted.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Jason?
Aye.
Mormon?
Aye.
Russell?
Aye.
Mullen?
Aye. All right, tonight we've got 3 action items. We've got 3 public hearings. We are a little short-staffed up here, so everybody knows. So we do want to see a vote of 3-1 to pass. Keep in mind, we are a recommendation to the council as well, so just know that. And then the last point I'll make is City Council, the next meeting that these will go to is going to be on May the 19th. So, okay, very good. So let's move on to our first item, minor subdivision, City of Dubuque, plat of Cedar Ridge. Come on up. Bob?
Good evening, Bob Shizzle, Assistant City Engineer.
Sure, please, if you'd like to just say a couple words, you can, Bob, or we'll provide a staff report also for this item, if you'd like to just explain the plat.
All right, I'm kind of pitch hitting here for
Yeah.
Nick Kiefer. So,
And Pat, that's okay, we will also provide a staff report if you're not fully, we'll provide additional information is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, he briefed me on it. So,
Okay.
originally, this was a one entire city parcel, as shown on the exhibit there. Mr. Bierman purchased some property adjacent to it where the hand is shown there. And then he approached the city to inquire if the city would be interested in disposing of a portion of the black and yellow highlighted area. So the city discussed, and the city had no, real interest in that property and were willing to dispose of it. So the city contacted all the adjacent property owners, there's 4 of them, to discuss the potential disposal of that and then offer to each of the adjacent property owners an opportunity to kind of stake claim or express interest. So of the 4 adjacent property owners that the city reached out to, 2 declined and 2 accepted. So Jason Rowan said that he was interested in Lot 1. Mr. Kubitz expressed interest in lots 2 and 3. And then Mr. Bierman was interested in Lot 4. And you'll notice that between lots 3 and 4, they are both the exact same size, so that we were being fair and consistent with respect to, kind of platting those lots 3 and 4. So that's basically what's in front of you.
Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
Any questions? Okay, staff report. Travis?
Assistant Planner Travis Robeljan. So this is Cedar Ridge Farm Place number 21. And Bob kind of explained the background of it. We're looking at 4 parcels being created here. Each of them does not have frontage, so they need the a waiver from the frontage requirement. They are otherwise in substantial compliance. One of the lots, I believe it's lot 1, includes an easement for stormwater, which is a current situation that already exists. And that's really all I have, unless you have comments or questions.
And if I could just add, these lots are all noted unbuildable lots at this point in time. So if they were to be consolidated with adjacent properties, that status could change. But for the purpose of this plat, they are intentionally labeled as essentially non-buildable lots.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Any questions from the commission? Entertain a motion for approval as submitted?
I move we recommend approval of the final plat of Cedar Ridge Farm Place number 21, subject to waiving the lot frontage requirements for lots 1 through 4.
A second.
Motion and a second. Jason, if you would.
Mormon,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Mulligan.
Aye. Okay, that motion passes. Bob, you did great. Thanks. You're probably here for the next couple, aren't you?
Yes, he is.
Move on to item number 2, final plat of the Southwest Arterial Plat 1.
Are these items 2 and 3?
Yeah, 2 and 3 are separate, but they're kind of similar. So they could be discussed, but they would need a separate motion
Maybe I
for
could
each one.
talk about both at the same time?
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
So now that the Southwest Arterial US 52, let me back up, Bob Schisel, Assistant City Engineer. Now that the Southwest Arterial US Highway 52 is completed, the city is responsible for the replatting, resurveying and replatting of the corridor. And through that process, then we will be designating property that will be conveyed to the Iowa Department of Transportation for the highway footprint. And then we're also platting off what the city will retain. So we are going through this process to survey and replat the corridor from US Highway 20 to 61-151. This is plat, which one is this one?
Number 1.
Plat 2 or plat 1? So this plat is at the US Highway 20 Southwest Arterial interchange. So we are, we have platted that, the kind of the light red area on that exhibit shows what will be platted and conveyed to the Iowa Department of Transportation. The light blue is where Chesterfield Drive is located, and so that will become City of Dubuque public right-of-way for Chesterfield Drive. And then the light green is a potential excess remnant parcel. And then the next agenda item will be number 3, that is plat number 2. And basically the same exercise, different colors, but the green will be platted and will be conveyed or deeded to the Iowa Department of Transportation. And the other colors will remain City of Dubuque.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Any questions for Bob? So we'll handle staff report. Go for it,
Assistant
Travis.
Planner Travis Strobeljan. So as Bob had noted, this is a kind of a cleanup project, cleaning up the right-of-ways and the corridors. All of these lots in both instances are in substantial compliance. They all have proper street frontage and are adequate size. So no waivers are needed for this one. That is about all I have to say about it. You do need 2 separate motions, so do plat 1, and then I do have a Scribner's error where I repeated myself on the second one with plat 1. So if you're reading that, just be careful that you're noting plat 2 on the second plat. That is all I have, unless you have questions.
Okay. Thanks, Travis. All right, so let's do a motion for item number 2, please.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we approve the final plat of the Southwest Arterial Plat 1.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Jason?
Russell,
Aye.
Christ,
Aye.
Lorman,
Aye.
Mulligan.
Aye. Okay, item 2 passes. Motion for item number 3.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion, we approve the final plat of Southwest Arterial Plat Number 2 as submitted.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Jason?
Christ,
Aye.
Lorman,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
Mulligan.
Okay, that motion passes well. We'll go to City Council, May 19th. Bob, thanks. Cool. All right, next item, public hearings. The way the public hearing will work, we'll ask you to come up, ask what it is that you're after from the commission, and then we'll have you take a seat. I will open up the floor for the public hearing. What I would ask is if there's a few of us here to speak on any respective item, maybe we'll have a line going over against the wall, so you'll state your name and address, and whether you're in favor or not of the item. And then just out of respect for everybody's time, if we have the same thing to say over and over, it's just, I agree with what was just said, et cetera. Try to keep it to, a minute or 2 or 3, that would be great. But the floor will be yours at that point. So we'll move on to our first public hearing item. So the rezoning of 405 and 575 Cedar Cross Road. Is our applicant here? Come on up.
Hi, Luke Murfeld, 10713 Cottingham Road, Piasta. Here to get approval to zone these parcels to C3. We obviously went after C4. And you
R3.
guys, what's that?
R3.
R4, I meant, sorry.
Gotcha.
I have a cold as well, so try not to get too close to this microphone. So, you guys were in favor of the R4, obvious, or however it works here, and then it went up and it kind of got voted through, but then got snagged. So pretty much the consensus of that board is wanting to do R3, and we're okay with that. So we're here to apply for R3.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you.
Before you sit, Luke, any questions for Luke? We've seen you many times, Luke. It's good to see you again. Okay, I'm going to open up the floor for a public hearing on this respective item. So if you're here in favor or not so, the floor is yours.
Name is Mike Reinhardt. I live at 401 Cedar Cross Road. Still in opposition of the R3 change. If it were an R2, probably be more doable, but it's just still the same reasoning. The added intrusions, the added noise, the surrounding of R1 properties with the individual properties with all of the added negative attributes that will come with those properties. Even now, the newest change to probably the area is going to be the sanitary sewer system that just, for the next 3 years until they get changes put in place, probably won't handle 12 units going in there. Callahan's project as of now, as of what was put in the Telegraph Herald, is they're going to have to put in some sort of a tank and collect it and then truck that extra waste to the wastewater treatment facility. So again, the added burden of 12 units on that collection system is just a bit too much. Surrounding the individual R1 properties, again, an R3 with 12 units, too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else? Good evening.
I'm Carol Moss, and I live at 3095 Nightingale Lane. And Mr. Mulligan and your members, I'm speaking to you tonight to make sure that whatever happens here, that the homeowner's insight is, or that you look out for the homeowner too. And if I understand it right, R3, we will be making contact. You know, if somebody's going to buy that and develop it, will we be notified?
I can address that during my staff report if you'd like,
Very
Chair
good.
Mulligan.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll allow some-
Okay. I just wondering if we could get information on the developers and what's going to go there. Also, I want to be assured that any changes to that, the homeowners have, that we have certain rights from what I understand. We want to make sure that the developer's intent will fit in with our already collaborative neighborhood. I'll give you two instances. ABC, we are in the same area as ABC Learning and the Denlinger Insurance. And both of those people are good fits because we did our homework on, like the daycare when they were going in there. We met with them, they approached us, and we were assured that it would be a Monday through Friday thing. And yes, cars come and go, but that's morning and afternoon. And that you know, how can you not want kids in your neighborhood that are fenced in? But they turned out to be we did our homework on that one, and they turned out to be a wonderful neighbor. The second one is Denlinger Insurance. That gentleman came to my house, actually, and explained to me what he wanted to do and where he was at. And because I knew where they were on Starlight, I've never seen cars backed up there, you know, to the point that it was unbearable. So, but he was nice enough to come down, and he had 3 employees. He's got 3 cars parked there, perfect. So whatever happens back there, I just hope it's something that can fit in with the way we all get along now. Other than that, and I will say, I'm kind of disappointed. I thought Luke and Julie would be my neighbors someday, but that's changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Anyone else this evening regarding this item? Okay, very good. Seeing none. Luke, if you'd like, the floor is yours to respond. If not, I'll move on to staff report.
So the goal is to sell this property and move on in life. We did want to move there. We did want to move my business there. Everybody can say that now, but we've seen what all happened. So I guess we don't want anything bad to go in there either. And everything that's got to go there has got to come here. It's got to go through the zoning and pass all of your eyes, just like it did tonight. So I just see no anything else, but you guys are the boss with everything, every step of the way. And that's all.
Thanks, Luke. Okay, our staff report, is that you, Sheena?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Mulligan. So Sheena Moon, Associate Planner. So I am going to just step back a little bit and share how we got here. So as the commission recalls, earlier this spring, we did review a request for these properties to be rezoned to R4. There was a recommendation for approval to that made to the City Council. The City Council initially reviewed the project in March, and at that time, they did vote for approval. However, the project was again considered at a second reading of City Council, and often with with rezoning requests, there can be 3 readings actually, or the city council can elect to waive future readings and make a decision, at the first meeting. So they have that authority to do so. In this instance, it did go to a second reading, and at that meeting, it looked as though there may not be support for an R4. So as opposed to just denying the request, there was a discussion about bringing it back to the Zoning Advisory Commission to consider whether an R3 zoning may be more appropriate for this neighborhood. And so that is what has brought us here today. So the request today is for R3. I'm gonna pull up my PowerPoint, but there may be some redundancies here, but I'll still walk through them. Pardon me while there we go. So I apologize. There's an error in the front of my, and you know what? I think this is the wrong PowerPoint. Scratch that. We're going to not do that. I'm going to just walk through some of the items that are outlined on this slide here, though, as I think it's pertinent. So as the commission is aware, this property is at 405 and 575 Cedar Cross. They're undeveloped properties currently, with the exception of 405 Cedar Cross that does have an existing garage on the property. The lots are about 2.5 acres in total. And they do have frontage along Cedar Cross, and 575 has frontage also along Nightingale. And so the site is slightly sloping. There's about a 70-foot elevation change downhill towards the southwest corner. As we've seen in aerial images before, there's surrounding both commercial and residential development in this area. It includes the insurance neighbor that the Ms. Moss mentioned, as well as the childcare. There's also the Dubuque Sports Complex in the area, as well as a Premier Ice, Arctic Glacier Premier Ice, as well as other various residential uses. So I'm going to go to my staff report. I apologize for that. So again, so I want to just note the previous request was for an R4 zoning. The R4 zoning would have allowed for multifamily up to 12 units, as well as townhomes and 2 families with a higher density. In the chart that you can see here on the screen, we can see the items that are highlighted are showing items that are the same uses that are permitted between the 2 zoning districts. And as you can see on the right there, the multifamily dwelling, the townhouse, and the 2-family dwellings would be the uses that would not be permitted in the current R1 zoning. In this instance for R3, it does limit those uses to a maximum of 6 dwelling units for multifamily and townhomes, and then 2 dwelling units for duplex as a duplex. So it is a less intense zoning district with respect to residential density permitted. I think it's also very important to note that single-family detached dwelling would still be a permitted use here. So whether someone were to purchase the property for a multifamily development, or whether they wanted to purchase it and build a single-family home, those would both be permitted. Ms. Moss was asking about whether or not there would be additional opportunity for input and feedback once the property was purchased and developed. And the short answer to that is that this zoning process is the opportunity for public input. If the zoning were to be approved, the uses by right, the uses listed here on the right here in blue would be permitted. There would be no additional public input required in order to develop the property. There would, however, still be the city's development review process. So the city's development review team, as the commission is aware of, it's comprised of our engineering department, planning, water, fire, police, community development, leisure services. Various departments can all weigh in on a project to ensure that any project would be in compliance with not only our Unified Development Code that we review in planning, but also any building codes, any engineering requirements or SUDAS requirements. Those would be looking at things such as stormwater management on the property, as well as items such as access to the property, utility connections, and things like that. It is important for me to distinguish, though, that a single-family home would not be required to go through that process, and neither would a duplex. But if it were a project that was proposing 3 or more units, that would require development review, site plan review. So let's see here. Additionally, there was some questions or comments regarding the sanitary sewer. So yes, as you are, I'm sure, all aware, the city is currently been transparent regarding some capacity issues downstream from this project. The Cedar Cross Road project at 380, just down from this site, is looking at unique solutions to the sanitary sewer capacity concerns. They're working with the city engineering department as well as the DNR to ensure that any potential solution that they can resolve there in the interim, while the city is working to address our capacity concerns, that would adhere to the required state and local regulations. But the city is also actively working to address those capacity issues. Something on this site would need to be evaluated to see if there was any capacity. So a single family home may be allowed to connect. Something of higher density might not be in the immediate future. This is really something that would need to be reviewed and would be reviewed as part of a site plan review process. As well as through our permitting process, there would be a question of whether or not connection for even a single family home could be allowed at this site. But that is obviously something that the city is watching very closely. We're very cognizant of that. There has even been letters sent out to potential property owners that could be impacted, like vacant sites that may look to develop in the future. So the city is taking some proactive steps out of our engineering department to try to be very transparent and address those issues or those concerns with respect to sanitary sewer. There is water in the area, both along Cedar Cross and Nightingale Lane. So connection to that is anticipated to not be an issue whatsoever. So with respect to traffic, both Cedar Cross Road and Nightingale Lane, Cedar Cross Road is classified as a minor arterial, and Nightingale Lane is classified as a local street. Any proposed development on the property would need to be evaluated to see whether there would be potential improvements that might need to be made to Nightingale. Anybody that lives in that neighborhood, I've heard that from multiple people, that there obviously are concerns with traffic in this area. And so there is a longer term plan to address that, I believe, along Cedar Cross Road. But that is something that, again, our engineering department would need to look at a little closer. Again, I don't believe that like a single family home would warrant any type of potential improvements. A development with multifamily may very well. So that would be evaluated during that site plan review process as well. I'm just gonna continue here. I did talk a little about adjacent areas. My last bullet point there, the city engineering department has looked at capital improvement plans with respect to that Cedar Cross Road, but that is something that is actively being discussed. And as we know, those things can change and shift from year to year. With respect to the city's comprehensive plan, we do believe that it would help. It would be in compliance or in support of the comprehensive plan goals, specifically to encourage a mix of housing for diverse populations throughout the community, to provide access to trails and open space, also to encourage multifamily development in proximity to jobs, to hopefully minimize transportation costs. And those are just some of the goals that we are identifying here. So I do want to mention the public input. So we did receive a letter from Ms. Moss, which has been provided to the commission. We also did receive a phone call today from Sandy Ronick, who is a neighbor down Nightingale Lane rather. Her primary concerns expressed to staff were with respect to traffic and wanting to be able to understand what potential traffic impacts could be with any future development here. Obviously more concerned with the higher density project. And we were able to explain to her that obviously the site plan review process, but she did request that we convey that concern to the commission for your consideration this evening. I believe that is all that I have for the commission this evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sheena. Any questions for staff?
I do.
Sure.
Sheena, does the lot where address is 405 limit the number of units based on the size of the lot at all?
Yes, so we'll pull the code up here and we can look at the exact information. But yes, so when it comes to the R3 zoning district, there is, as there is in all of our zoning districts, what we call bulk regulations. The bulk regulations establish the setback requirements. It establishes how, so we say 6 units, but it is based on the area of the property. 2,000, so for that property, it would require 2,000 square feet of site area per unit. So I can double check the area of that lot. Let me just go here. I'm gonna pull up my GIS and do that. We can get you an idea of a number for that property. All right. So that lot is about 15,000 square feet. So they would be allowed to have 6 units in that instance, provided that they're also meeting the lot coverage requirement. The parking requirement may be more challenging on that property. They would be required 1.5 parking spaces per unit for multifamily. Also, stormwater would be a requirement, and also the setback requirements. Each property would also be required to maintain a minimum of 20% permeable area, which would be green space as well. So we would certainly evaluate any proposed project to ensure that it's meeting all of those criteria.
I have a few questions. Is the 6 lots, I'm sorry, 6 units per lot for each of the 2 lots that we are talking about here? So like up to 12 total, if they would fit.
So yeah, there are 2 properties here, correct? Yep, and the zoning district would allow, yes, so correct. It could be 12 versus our prior review, which allowed for potentially up to 12.
And can
But
you
yes.
remind us how that varies from R4 and R2, which aren't on the table at this
Yeah.
presentation, even though we've seen this application
Yeah.
so many times before?
Yeah, yep, and I do actually have the R4 table that's still in my staff report here, and we'll pull up the R2 as well. Yep, thank you. Thanks for your help. Yeah, is 6,000, is? R2. Okay, so R4, again, so we're talking the zoning, yeah, do you mind?
No, it's 2,000 per.
So R4, you're saying? R4. Yeah, sorry, I don't have these memorized. I have to look at these. But R4 is also 2,000 square feet of site area per unit. And I'm sorry, you said R2?
Is 3,000 per or 6,000 per?
3,000 per or 6,000 per all. And the R2 would limit it, multifamily is not permitted in the R2. It would allow for duplexes and townhomes, maximum of 2 units.
And how many units for the R4?
R4 could go from 3 to 12, up to 12, assuming, again, it meets those bulk regulations.
Okay.
And if I recalled last time, I believe we had calculated approximately 7 could be provided on that smaller 405 lot. However, again, coming back to the parking requirements, open space, things like that, we'd have to look at that. That's just a number based on the calculations specifically.
And was one of the initial applications for commercial zoning for these lots before the R4 came to us?
Yeah, so there was initially a request for CS, and if you can see in the image here, if you recall, the initial request for commercial service is CS, included the corner lot here as well as 405 and 575. And in the past, this lot did move forward on its own and was rezoned, but these 2 fell off of that request for commercial service.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Good. Any other questions from the commission? About all motion to rezone the property of 405 and 575 Cedar Cross Road from R1 Single Family Residential to R3 Moderate Density Multifamily Residential. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Jason?
Christ,
Aye.
Lorman,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
Mulligan.
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, so that motion passes. So the rezoning of 405 and 575 will go to City Council on May 19th. Thank you, everybody. Carol, Mike, Luke, thank you.
And Chair Mulligan, if I may just add that there is an opportunity for public input at the city council meeting as well. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, we're on to public hearing item number 2, the rezoning of let me see, let me get my bearings here. Rezone the property from PUD with planned industrial designation to planned unit development with planned residential designation on Radford Road. Is our applicant here tonight? Great.
I'm Tom Larson with Beasing and Associates, 1212 Locust Street here in Dubuque. We're the engineers representing the potential developer for the site. The developer would like to, or the potential developer would like to rezone it so that he can put up residential units. 18 plexes is what he's looking at presently. There's, as you probably are aware, there's apartments to the north and commercial buildings to the south. There's services in the area. The developer or potential developer has talked about a stage development to try and help with the city's sanitary sewer problems or issues. There's stormwater detention on the site, potentially. Whatever's required, I guess. That's all I have.
Very good.
Have any questions or?
Any questions? Nope. Very good.
you.
Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to open up the floor for any comments from the public on this one. All right, very good. Seeing none, I'll close that. Travis, floor is yours.
Assistant Planner Travis Shrubelgen. So as the applicant indicated, they're looking at doing planned unit development, which requires a conceptual development plan. That plan is shown on the screen now. There's 3 pages. I don't know.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe that's not the best one. I'm not sure. It's multifamily, 72 total units. They're meeting and exceeding the parking requirement of 1.5 per unit. They will go through the development review team. They'll have to meet all the codes that are required there. There is Radford Road, obviously, on the west side. That would be the access to the site. That is considered local street at this location from the Iowa DOT. That is more than ample for the traffic load, proposed traffic load. This has been in a PUD in the industrial district since 1980, when it was annexed about 1979, 1980. That industrial district PUD was most recently updated in 2022. This would remove it from that PUD and create its own, similar to the property to the north. This is, again, multifamily. We have not received any public input. And then we would also just need to adopt the conceptual plan along with the resolution. It will go to the May 19 city council meeting, and that's really all I have, unless you have additional comments.
Was this carved off of a parcel?
No, this has been kind of an L-shaped parcel that's been there for quite a while. I know it's been for sale for quite some time. And yeah, utility, obviously with DRT, they'll have to go through the process for stormwater, sanitary sewers. There's Maine to the south, but it also is going through similar issues as any other property in this portion of town. So the development review team, the engineering department will handle all those requirements.
Right. And I'm just going to add a little bit, if you don't mind. So this also did go through a conceptual plan review with our development review team. So we did sit down and review that with engineering and, again, water, fire. This conceptual plan is found to be acceptable as it is laid out today. There was a big discussion, or I guess a complete discussion, regarding the sanitary sewer capacities. As we talked about with the previous project, this is one of those properties that has been identified to be affected by the capacity issues downstream. And so we have had that discussion with the applicant. They've been made aware of that, and they continue to have discussions with the city engineering department regarding their timeline and development plans, and we will continue to do that as this moves forward. So just to be transparent regarding that.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks.
I do have a question on this one. The parking lot layout is, it's kind of centered between, the driveway is centered between the units there. If this driveway was going to be extended to the north, would that have to be shown on this conceptual plan?
To the property to the north?
No, to the rest of the property to the north.
Oh, so this is the conceptual development plan, so any substantial change, are you implying they'd add another building or two?
Right.
In the future? Yeah, so they would have to come back before the board and update that. They'd have to amend their PUD to include additional units and or a different site pattern.
Right.
And you can't see, there is, I guess I can talk a little more about this, but there is sidewalk all along Radford Road as required by code, and that will ideally connect to the sidewalk that's existing to the north. This does add workforce housing to the area, which obviously there's some there already, just to the north, but it acts as a buffer to lower density residential throughout the city. That's generally a pattern you see. So that's all I have there.
Very good. Anything else, Rich?
Nope.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on item number 2.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to rezone the property from planned unit development with planned industrial designation to planned unit development with planned residential designation, the property on Radford Road.
I'll second.
Jason, we have a motion and a second.
Lorman,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
Christ,
Aye.
Mulligan.
Okay, that motion passes, and we'll go to council on the 19th of May. Thanks, guys. Okay, we're on to item number 3 of our public hearing at 101 Airborne Road. The request is to rezone the property from ag to heavy industrial. Is our applicant here?
All right. Good evening. My name is Ken Miller. I'm the Solid Waste Agency Administrator for the Dubuque Metropolitan Area Solid Waste Agency. So the Solid Waste Agency, as part of our long-range plan that was developed for the site, is seeking to rezone these parcels, which are in the city limits, along with additional parcels which are in the county, to facilitate the permitting of future landfill expansion. So the agency board approved the release of a request for proposals for site development, long-range site development, back in March of 2023. Then they awarded the study in May of 23, and the permitting plan was to permit the permit process was approved in October of 23. All those occurred during agency board meetings, which are public. On 5/17 is when they were presented with the options for future expansion. They chose to pursue alternative 4, which is the long-range plan, and that's the map that I have sent Sheena.
I'll pull that up. Sorry.
So option 4 here includes the planned development of the site over the next 193 years. So it's a phased development of the site. The goal is to be as transparent as possible with our property out there and to provide that long-range plan so that everyone knows what the site will be developed to. With the first phase of development occurring at the lower end of the map there, so that would be the next phase of development. That phase alone gets us 60 to 70 years of landfill life before we even have to look at the other phases of development. So the goal, though, is to permit it now so that we can provide that long-range plan. It does take into account the parcel that we did also apply for heavy industrial for, but is not planned for landfill development. So that property does have a restricted covenant on it. The planned development here, which this is the rough plan, of course, over the next 193 years, they'll develop the engineering designs and specifications for building out the remaining cells, but does take into account the fact that that land is not available for landfill development. So, but it does re-permit that property so that if in the future, when we get further away from the existing maintenance shop if they would deem it necessary to, say, build a vehicle storage area there so that they don't have to move the vehicles back and forth every night, but only take them there when they need for repairs. That would allow for that to be included. But yeah, the majority of the development will take place over the next 193 years, so long past when any of us will be here. The long-range goal for the property out at the landfill for all of our acreage is a nature preserve. So that's why we don't have any plans for development on the cells that are closed or any existing plans for those. It's to provide that nature habitat for out there. And then we did review all this during our strategic planning process, which is another public meeting we had back in February of 2024. All of that, along with all meetings of the board, are public. The minutes and the agendas are published on our website and are available to anyone for review at any time. I would note, too, that the project will, of course, go through several regulatory reviews, including the Army Corps of Engineers will have to review. There is a creek that runs through the property right now, which we will work with the Army Corps of Engineers on how to best relocate that over the course of the project. Of course, that will not be impacted any time in the next 70 years. We are working with that permitting option to see at what point they would want us to relocate that creek, if it has to be done immediately or if it can be done closer to when development near that area will occur. That's all subject to the Army Corps of Engineers approval. The plan is to maintain the current entrance during the course of the project. And in fact, because of the recently approved construction contract for the Customer Convenience Center, which is located along Airborne Road down by our gas facility, it will only be the commercial truck traffic that will utilize the existing entrance once that facility comes online. Commercial truck traffic only makes up about 48% of the vehicles that come in and out of the landfill. Majority of the vehicles are still smaller homeowner vehicles, which will be relocated to the Customer Convenience Center. So that means we're looking at about 100 to 150 vehicles per day accessing the site at our current rate. And so that's kind of what we'll see for traffic-wise. But yeah, the land in these parcels to be redeveloped won't see any landfill activity at our current disposal rates for 75 to 100 years before we get over to that side. It's just to permit it now because that provides the transparency and the long-range plan for the site, which is the goal of the study and the goal of the rezoning. So that's kind of where we're at with why we're requesting this now. So it's, in order to permit it, we first have to rezone it, so.
Again, those permits have a heck of a lifetime.
Yeah, it will be, it's a good process, so.
Can we ask questions now?
Carrie, yes, please.
Can you go back to the map that shows the different cells and also answer a question first about, I didn't read the whole strategic plan summary or the plan, but when you expect the capacity of the existing, landfill operations to peak and for the next cell to start being used, and can you circle that, the next cell again?
So right now we're in cell 9, which is the white area adjacent to the purple area there, kind of from where your cursor is on down. That area with the abutment liner project planned for this summer to extend it all the way up. Cell 1 adds, I think we're at just a hair under 15 years of capacity. So we'd likely be looking at construction in about 11 to 13 years.
So you're going to continue to use the existing cells that you have for another 10 to 15 years is the projection.
Yep.
And not begin construction on the next cell for 10 years.
So
And when
what we're
that
doing,
construction begins, exactly where is that limited to?
so the next phase would be the first, like kind of bubble of purple below the white phase there. So that area there
Okay.
that goes up adjacent to a home owned by the landfill that's currently occupied. So it would go up to that area. They will start soil borrow activities there this year. That's just where they're taking soil there from daily cover operations and also soil needed for the Customer Convenience Center project for landscaping and everything down there and to bring the site up to grade. There is a radio tower on that property that we are looking at relocating as part of this cell expansion project. We are working with Radio Dubuque on that relocation for their radio tower. And so that is the next logical phase because contiguous is what we are looking at here. One of the other options included doing kind of this first phase that runs along Highway 20 and then hopping over the creek and expanding over there. But this option provides contiguous landfill, which is preferred by the state to have the contiguous property rather than separate cells. So that was part of the reasoning for the board to approve this one. It includes the large stormwater pond. So we have a stormwater pond now in that purplish shaded area. It's very small. This would expand the size of that stormwater retention pond as part of that creek relocation. So the idea is that can handle the surges and then slowly let the water into that tributary. So just like it does now, but just larger because the site expands.
And how much of the landfill property that you have now has already been capped and closed?
So right now, only cells 1 through 3A are officially closed according to DNR standards. 3B through 8 are under what is called an EV cap that is currently being reviewed by DNR in the state. EV caps exist in other areas of the country. Iowa has not allowed them currently, but it does have that cap on it, which prevents the intrusion of water. So it has 4 feet of compacted soil on top of there and then a vegetative layer. The idea is that landfills become dry tombs once they close, so that no additional liquids or anything can enter into the landfill unless you do some sort of recirculation. So
What does EV stand for and how does it differ from a standard cap?
So the standard cap would require us to put a liner over top of the landfill and then put the earth and burn cap on there. So the EV cap eliminates the need for that liner. Sometimes those liners, because moisture does get underneath them, can cause side slope destabilization because the water, even though the clay is compacted, if it works its way down there, can cause that lubrication that allows the side slopes to destabilize, which is why EV caps became something that they wanted to explore as an option, because without that liner cap there, it makes it easier to prevent that destabilization. So.
Thank you.
I have a question also.
Yep.
Excuse me, Ken. Are the expected disposal rates, how do they compare to the current disposal rates?
So we did peak during COVID at 176,000 tons. We have seen our disposal drop a little bit each of the last couple of years. We're currently projected about 170,000 tons this year. During COVID, most facilities saw a peak as people were home. They cleaned out years worth of built up material in their homes, which led to a spike in material deliveries, not only to the landfill, but our other diversion options also. We saw a huge spike in household hazardous waste during that time period, and then an extreme drop off because people had cleared out so much of that during that time period. And so right now, it all fluctuates all the time. So operating as a regional facility, of course, we're always, and being on the border with Wisconsin, Illinois, it does impact us differently than, say, if we were in Des Moines. There are other landfilling options over in Illinois and Wisconsin that impact us, so we have to be sensitive with our rates as far as maintaining that. Also, the only big change we would foresee anytime in the future is that landfills are becoming more regional all the time. Fewer and fewer facilities if they're smaller in size, such as landfills in, say, the rural part of Northeast Iowa, have the capital to do the environmental protections necessary when building out a landfill cell and to maintain the revenue to do so. And so facilities have become a little bit more regional. A good example is the facility in Lynn County. They are at the point where they only have about 10 years of landfill life left. They can only operate at their site until 2044, and then they have to cease operations altogether. There are no options to permit another facility in Lynn County. However, they are looking at permitting an expansion of the Iowa County landfill that is adjacent there. Iowa County is looking at that to take waste from Cedar Rapids, potentially. But their rates will drastically skyrocket. They're looking at a disposal rate over $100 a ton, where their current rate's in the 40s per ton if they have to move to that site. And so, of course, that will affect the cost for businesses in the area to dispose of their waste, cost for residents to dispose of their waste. So it's all, they've done a long-range plan, try to figure out what the next steps are, but it is something that was impacting them and did influence our decision to look at a long-range plan for this facility to provide that financial responsibility to the community. This will allow for our waste to be here and not have to be transported off-site, where the rates would drastically increase for that disposal cost.
I have a, are you done?
I have another
Go on,
question.
sir, go ahead.
I guess as far as the city is always striving to be sustainable Dubuque, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what efforts are being made to reduce the rate of disposal annually so that the landfill would last longer?
Yeah, so we have a number of diversion programs that we support. We can't quantify all diversion because, like, the city of Dubuque collects its own recycling. So we don't get, the agency doesn't get that data necessarily, or any of the recycling that's collected in Asbury, Piasta, which are all hauled by private companies. We don't have access to that data. So the only commingled recycling data we have is from our public drop-off stations that we have throughout the county. We have 10 of those. Well, the goal of those is to serve rural residents and those in multifamily that do not have access to recycling at their multifamily location. So we have that program. We have a glass diversion program that exists at 6 locations. We do the household hazardous waste and electronics diversion programs. We recently launched a battery diversion program because batteries have become very problematic in the material management industry, causing fires in trucks, collection trucks, down at resorting centers such as the Dittmer facility. It's highly likely that the Jackson County transfer station, which recently burned down, we haven't heard the official result of that, but that was the result of a battery fire. So we have that battery collection program going on now to keep those out of the waste stream, because it's when they come into contact with something mechanized that they usually start on fire, because their seals get broke. We do composting diversion, so we compost at the site. We have tires, appliances, so we do several different diversion activities that way. And then, of course, always looking at the changes in the materials overall. So the influx of online shopping and a lot of the shipping packages not being recyclable, of course, increases the amount of waste coming out. So the agency participates in several different professional organizations advocating for producer responsibility related to packaging modifications that would help reduce that amount of waste coming to the facility. So, and then we also participate in the state's environmental management system program, which has 6 core components focused on greenhouse gas emissions, recycling, household hazardous waste, organics, which is composting, environmental education, and water quality. So We always have at least one objective and target in each of those 6 areas as part of that participation in the DNR's program. And then we usually apply for grants related to those. We did recently work on a grant, plan to reapply for a grant to use AI technology to identify materials within the waste that could have been diverted, so already have existing waste streams. So it uses the AI with the camera images, and then the plan was to start targeted education. So like say pick a garbage truck that picks up the exact same route every Monday morning from these neighborhoods within the city of Dubuque. Then we would do targeted education to find out why they're not diverting those materials. Is it don't have the right size container? Is it just lack of knowledge about what can be put in the containers? So that's a long-range plan too, is to utilize technology like that to revolutionize it and get those materials out of the waste stream.
Gary?
I have a question related to what's happening with the land when it's not being used. Because obviously this is a
Yep.
very long-term plan, 190
Yep.
years. You talk about it becoming a nature preserve at the end of that, the whole thing. And I believe that because I've visited nature preserves on closed landfills before. But you have an area that's active, you know, that will be closed in 15 years. Another area will be active. This other land that you're showing in pink, I'm assuming will just stay as is. And then on the closed area, like what is that now? What's happening there? I mean, are there initiatives to open up nature areas or use it for nature while it's not being actively used? It already is, but okay.
Yeah. Cells 1 through 8, if the EV permitting for 3 through 8 would be approved by the DNR, would make it easier to facilitate that because it would create a nice contiguous piece of property to do some, you know, like Cedar Rapids landfill has trails on their closed landfill site. The biggest challenge right now is the logistics of it because of the way this landfill is laid out, given the more hilly nature of Dubuque versus the flat land in, say, Cedar Rapids. But the land that would not be utilized right away would stay as is. So in talking with planning, we would still be able to lease it out for farming and everything like we currently do. It just allows for the permitting process through the DNR to occur then, is the goal.
What we're looking at on this map is, it's almost like a final plan. It's not a phased plan. If we were to see a phased plan, it would show these larger areas still being used for farmland for another 100 plus years, basically.
Yeah, this just shows, it shows the overall footprint of the plan once it's done. It will all be done in phases over the course of the next 193 years. The portion to run along Highway 20 there, of course, will be phased out over 70 years as it is. So, I mean, the idea is it spreads out the capital outlay, of course, also then too. So build this as we need the space.
So perhaps once this gets zoned and approved, will you have more like, you know, phased maps?
Yeah,
assuming?
yep, once we get the permitting complete, then we would start, we would look at releasing an RFP for design of the cells. So this is a very rough design that takes into account the potential footprint for the whole project,
This is
so.
basically a concept plan
Yes.
for zoning.
Yep.
It's not like a phased plan that really reveals anything about like what
No,
it'll
I
look
mean-
like in 10 to 20 years. Okay.
No, other than there's essentially 3 big phases in there, but they'll be broken up into to countless smaller phases over time.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Any other, we should ask any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Appreciate your time, Ken, and expertise there. So I will open the floor to you. State your name, address, and
I have a handout. Can I give each one of these?
Staff.
Those are in the staff.
thank you.
So my name is Steve Inglesby. I live at, can you go back to that one map that showed the green on there?
Yeah.
Are you able to zoom in a little bit, just to the west of the square there?
Okay, so I'm at, right there, perfectly. At 15680 Estate Lane. We are part of the original Jennings Farm that was originally, I believe, around 80 acres. And they laid our neighborhood out about 20 years ago. And the agreement that I just passed out to you, Barb and L.A. Jennings sold that piece of property, the 101 piece, and in 2005. And part of their agreement was that it wasn't going to be used for landfill purposes. That is a green space that has farm ground in it with the creek that runs through it and the trees. And our neighborhood being just directly west of that, we are on our own private wells, and we're very concerned about the landfill expanding into that corner, especially if they take out trees and remove the green space that's there right now. It sounds like from the presentation that, you know, they're talking about it being, you know, 20, 50, 80, 200 years out. But our concern is if it's approved now, that opens the door and allows, you know, destruction of that area and possibly landfill activities to go on there. So that's our concern and why we're opposed to it.
It was Steve, right?
Steve, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good evening.
My name is Glenn Beck, and I live basically, 15591, that you see right there, right adjacent to that area, actually. And I also own the property next to it. And one of the reasons that we bought the property was really because of that situation where a landfill could not be built there. I know that it was there, but it is expanding very quickly. 10 years ago, you couldn't hear any backup alarms or smells or anything like that. You're starting to be able to have that kind of activity at night, particularly. Obviously, if it becomes a heavy construction area zoned for that, even though there's not going to be any building taking place, it's going to lower our property value, no question about it. Any idea that that land could be made into a landfill at some time will probably destroy half of our property value. So that's the main concern. Obviously, we love the area. I could show you pictures if you want to, but adjacent to our property is one of the most beautiful areas that you've ever seen, actually, in that little area. So hate to see it destroyed. Thank you very much for the presentation on how it's 200 years, so that's great. I don't think I'm going to be alive then, but it'd be nice. Maybe there's some kind of technology that might work. But I actually come from Illinois, and it's nice to have the hills, and that's why we moved here. So you want to keep that beauty. Thank you.
Glenn. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Lance Hummel. I'm at 15633 Estate Lane. While my property doesn't directly board the site, it's in close proximity. As are many of the homes of the others that signed the petition that I submitted earlier this week. I'm here tonight not only to represent myself, but everybody that I spoke with over the past 2 days. 39 out of the 40 people I talked to strongly oppose changing this from agricultural to heavy industrial. I've submitted a formal objection, a signed petition, and additional documents, including the warranty deed and lease agreement related to the parcel in question. It was stated that we want to be as transparent as possible with this change, yet none of the people, besides about 4 people, were notified, including the individual that sold the property and has the rights to lease the property. So it's very disheartening and seems corruptive in not being transparent to everybody that would be involved. It's also important to note that the land was sold and leased under the clear understanding that it would not be used for landfill expansion or use. Changing the zoning now would not only violate the spirit of these agreements, but they'd also undermine the trust of the residents that the residents placed in those transactions. The area is residential in nature and it contains a small creek that poses environmental concerns. Rezoning to heavy industrial threatens the safety, health, and quality of life of the nearby residents and contradicts how this land was originally represented in the sale. We respectively urge the board and recommend the denial of this rezoning request and to support the rights and the expectations of the residents in this community. Any questions for me?
I do have one.
Yes, Rich.
The warranty deed has a legal description, and since I don't have the township range and section stuff on this map, can you tell me what property would be included in this document?
Yeah, so Sheena has the cursor on that property. And then the second parcel that's noted in that is the very corner where there's a 101 down.
Am I correct? I'm sorry.
There,
Here.
down. There's a tiny
Right
parcel.
here. Thank
There's
you.
a tiny parcel right there in that corner.
Can't see it because of the label, but it's.
Yeah, so those are the two parcels related to the covenant. And again, the covenant states that it's for a landfill site.
The part from the Jennings farm is that the square with the 101 right down there at the bottom. Yeah, that was the 40-acre part from the Jennings farm. That was part of that deed that I sent out.
Thank you.
I think now's maybe an okay time, and I think there will be more comments, but just to talk for a minute about the covenant. The staff did consult with the city attorney. The covenant is a private agreement. It is between Damascus and the previous property owner. It is important to understand that that would be a separate legal document outside of any zoning, so that document would still stay in place. Any rezoning approval would not circumvent or in any way affect that document. That document is still a legal agreement, just for clarity's sake, between the property owner and the previous owner. So I just want to clarify that for the record, and that's just, again, that's coming on the advisement of our city attorney.
With that being the case, what's the point in changing it from agricultural to heavy industrial if the deed stays in place and it cannot be used as landfill use? Defined of landfill use doesn't matter if it's a roadway, if it's a place that the landfill operators go to picnic, that's landfill use.
So
Anything else?
Thank you.
Lance? Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Great. Good evening.
Commission members, Ken, thanks for that presentation. My name's Steve Olson. I live at 11046 Cottingham Road. Our property line directly conflicts with the area that we're talking about. And Rich, the parcel ID number separately, it ends in 003. I don't know the full parcel ID number on it. And my only concerns with it, the zoning and stuff like that, as Mr. Hummel had stated, and Ken had alluded to that 70 years down the road, these pieces may not even be used. Then yeah, that would be my concern. Is there a rush to change from agricultural to heavy industrial? We have kids that walk our property. We go down the creek that goes down there. My kids dig clay out of that creek, so they're down there, using the property as we want it to be used. And the last thing I think we would want to see would be, building site on that, whether it be heavy machinery, just the noise and just the added disruptions of the peace and tranquility of what our neighborhood consists of now. And I think that if the landfill wants to be good land stewards, just keep it the way it is right now. Just keep it as agricultural. Let us have the peace and tranquility of what that originally was designed for by Lester and Barb Jennings.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay,
Appreciate you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Carrie Voss. I live at 1140 Cottingham. So again, my property does not directly butt up to this. But first and foremost, there is the agreement that that piece, it was not to be used as landfill. It's in the deed. That was the agreement. The other thing I would have to agree with was what everybody else said, in addition to what is the immediate plan? Why zone it. If you're not planning on doing anything with it for 70 to 190 years, why rezone it now? That is my question. What is the purpose that to be immediately rezoned now? And if somebody could answer that question, I don't know, Ken can answer that question? Yeah, so,
You will get the opportunity.
okay, we
in a
got
minute.
70 years. There's no reason it needs to be rezoned this month, this year, the next century. So, thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Anyone else this evening? No? Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody. We'll close the public hearing. Ken, the floor is yours.
Okay, so to answer that question immediately, as stated during the presentation, in order for us, the state DNR, to permit this property, it has to be rezoned. They won't permit it for landfill activities if it is still zoned agricultural property. The idea is to permit the area so that it, as I mentioned, that it will stay transparent. This is what we intend to use the landfill for, or the land for, over the next, well, 193 years for that cell. As is stated, we have about 15 years left in our current cell, so we're really looking at about 208 years total life in this area. So it's planning for that long term. By permitting it now, it creates that level of transparency. The design that we had takes into account the 1,500-foot buffer as required by state code. So we have that 1,500-foot buffer, the 500-foot buffer from land, 1,500-foot buffer from all private wells in the area, and creates that transparency so that if there is any other future development in the area, as we know, Dubuque continues to expand, expands west, south, other areas, that this way, if there's ever redevelopment of that agricultural area that's around the facilities, such as the Jekyllin Farm or anything like that, that any development there comes with the knowledge that once this is permitted, that this is the intended use for that area, and any development would understand that yes, it may be 70, 80, 100 years off before it's there, but that is the intention. So, and creates that permitting responsibility. So that is why we are seeking to rezone it now. The property in question that has the covenant on it, this does take, like I mentioned, this takes into account the fact that we will not have landfilling activities in that area, other than to, of course, there is some reshaping of the ground to accommodate it, but there is no landfill activities. So the landfill cells itself, there won't, the boundary for the landfill will not impact that area. So, and that area is property owned by the landfill agency that is leased back to the Jennings at a rate of $10 a year. So they have access to that property per that sale agreement, and the covenant was taken into account when the design was made. And so that's what, like I said, there's no activity within that area for use for that property. The only other question I had was, or the other thing that came up that interested me was activity at night that was mentioned. The landfill's operating hours are Monday through Saturday, 7:30 to 3:30. So we don't have activities occurring out there in the evening hours other than if there is an event. So we have had a couple of after-hours fires over the years that have required staff to be out there at night to extinguish those fires, and those are due to batteries that were improperly disposed of, which of course we are trying to actively prevent with the recycling program. So other than that we do not engage in activities at night out there. We don't have lights on site. In fact, that's always the challenge when we have a fire, is that there is no street lights, there's nothing that can provide light to the area other than the lights on the equipment themselves. So we have the lights on the equipment, but that's about it we can use to light up the area in the event there is a fire after hours in the evening. So, but yeah, that is our intention, is to permit it now so that we get the permitting process out of the way and then can begin the long-range cell development plan. So.
Okay. Anything additional? Yeah.
I realize this pink is just the concept plan. It's not maybe easily apparent to see how it fits, you know, onto the map that shows all the houses. So you were just pointing out those boxes there on the
Yep.
left. How many feet back from the homeowners' property lines who've come up to speak is like the edge of that box, the east edge of the box?
So we stay outside of that entire 40-acre parcel. I'm not sure the exact dimensions without being able to measure them on GIS, other than the boundary of the landfill itself maintains the required setbacks by state and federal code. So we maintain the 500-foot property boundary setbacks required by code from the edges of our own property. So we wouldn't be required to be 500 feet away from the covenant, but 500 feet away from our own property boundary, and then maintains the 1,500-foot boundary for many private wells.
So those two boxes that you're referring to where you're not building landfill, the homes are actually to the west? They're kind of off the map from
Yes,
that
the homes would
box?
be where the printed text is right now.
Thank you.
Right, so
Yep.
there's actually a pretty big, well, it's not as big as what's there now,
Yeah.
but there's some kind of like, I guess, it doesn't go up right to the houses anyway, the plan.
No, the landfill itself
Is this?
would be, if you're looking at the two maps together,
Yeah.
roughly where that black and white dashed line, it makes a turn in instead of a turn straight, but that's roughly the same distance across that parcel. It goes about a little over halfway up that parcel.
Are there two separate parcels here?
There are,
There's a
Yes.
002 and a 003.
There are multiple parcels, correct?
Yeah.
It's a portion of two parcels and then that whole 40, which is not being
correct.
proposed to have cells.
Yep.
And if you
How
were
many
wanting-
parcels are being asked to be rezoned here?
From the city zoning aspect, it's
We have the.
Two portions of
Yeah.
existing lots and then a full 40-acre section.
So here,
So 003 is the 40-acre parcel, 101.
yes.
Correct. And then it's a portion of that one angle into the left or just above it, and then a portion of the corner of
This
the.
here. Yeah.
Nope, you're right there. And then there's another parcel just to the bottom right, right where you were, just to the right.
Sorry, sorry. Going away.
Right here.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Right,
Wrong
going that
direction.
L
Yeah,
shape.
so it's this
So it's a
piece,
portion of that, and a
this
portion of that, and a
piece,
portion of that.
this, and a corner there.
But even the portion that the slope goes into has to be rezoned from ag to heavy industrial for the permitting? Because there's slope going into it, or it's just because it's part of your property?
it's part of the, I suppose it would be possible to partition those off, but it doesn't, but zoning them heavy industrial doesn't prevent us from still leasing that land. Like, Don Jacqueline stopped down to meet with me earlier, or late last week on Friday, to go over the portion of the farmland he owns, which is right near where the word ag is, so you can kind of see those two strips of farm field. And those will still continue to be farmed for decades to come. So there's no plan to change that activity unless he ceases to lease that land. Then we would also look at, other options there are to lease that land out. If someone else is interested in farming it, he just has first right to lease that per the agreement when we purchased that land from the Jacqueline family farm decades ago. So
But this piece on the south side that it immediately abuts these homes, like who owns that now? Does the owner,
You do.
does the homeowner, does?
yeah,
the
we own
prop-
that.
Okay.
Yep.
so-
Yep, we bought it in 2005 and signed the covenant, the restrictive covenant. I believe that was dated 2008.
Yeah.
2007.
The same covenant
Yep.
as the previous property owner that's been brought up already?
No, in fact, the covenant was added after the property was purchased. So the property was purchased by the landfill agency, and then in 2007 is when they agreed to add the covenant to it. So after they had already owned it free and clear, they agreed to add the covenant to it. So they had already purchased the property when they added the covenant. So
So is this, Is this request breaking that covenant? I'm
No.
confused.
No, it would
so-
not.
Yeah,
The
so-
zoning is wholly separate.
Yeah, so that is a legal document between private property owners. It's between the agency and the property owner. The city is not a party to that covenant. We have not, and with respect to the rezoning, I guess, they are two separate pieces. So rezoning would not eliminate the covenant. The covenant would still stand, it'd still be a legal document,
Okay.
and it would still be in place.
And does that, I think the public hearing's closed, but does that have a timeline on it, that covenant?
Not the
perpetuity.
covenant.
In perpetuity, yeah.
Prevents the building of a landfill on that. Yep.
To be used as a landfill site.
Yep, for landfill activities,
Right, and I know there was a question earlier regarding
like related to burying trash.
the zone, like this definition of landfill, again, that's in a private agreement between the property owners. The city's code would not necessarily apply to that definition of landfill site. That language specifically says as a landfill site. So that would be something that, that would need to be discussed legally on that end, on the private
The
property owner
intent was
end.
that we would not construct a landfill cell in that area. So we wouldn't excavate the ground, line it, and do all the activities that we normally would do before we would put trash in that area. That it prevents that landfill activity.
And on a an unrelated note, it's also noting in there the well distance, and that's so that they could have a well on their original farm where most of those houses are.
Yep.
Does that covenant relate to the whole entire piece of property or just the part that's portioned out there?
That entire 40-acre parcel. And the adjacent, I forget the acreage on that one.
Small piece here.
Very small.
Yeah, rather tiny, the little corner there.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for Ken? Great, thank you. Our staff report tonight is Jason? Okay, great.
Assistant Planner Jason Duba. The applicant, Dubuque Metropolitan Area Solid Waste Agency, or DMASWA, proposes to rezone the subject site to HI Heavy Industrial to allow the land to be used as part of the sanitary landfill. This is in DMASWA's plan to expand the capacity of the landfill to accommodate future demand. DMASWA's strategic plan estimates that with this added area, the landfill will have capacity for 190 plus years. The landfill is now in the process of obtaining permits for future landfill cell expansion that would use this land. The land will be converted into a sanitary landfill, except for the parcel with the covenant, which will manage solid waste in an environmentally friendly manner with an engineered base, which will be combined with a collection system for the leachate, which is the liquid generated as waste breaks down, to protect and prevent the contamination of the soil and groundwater. To improve air quality, the DMASWA landfill also has a gas collection system to capture methane, a highly potent greenhouse gas produced as the waste in the landfill breaks down, which is converted to renewable natural gas. Without access to a local solid waste disposal facility, all waste generated in the area would have to be hauled by truck to another location, increasing the waste's greenhouse gas impact and cost. The comprehensive plan goals promote solid waste reduction, composting, and pollution mitigation. The city's future land use map identifies the subject site as heavy industrial, the same as the rest of the landfill. The subject property was in Dubuque County until it was annexed into the city of Dubuque in 2011 and brought in with AG agriculture zoning. It was annexed to become part of the DMASWA landfill. The property is comprised of one entire parcel and portions of two others. The area totals approximately 103 acres. DMASWA has frontage along Airborne Road. The site has sloping topography. The property is currently a mix of forest and farmland. The subject property is on the edge of the Dubuque city limits, so the properties to the north, west, and south are in unincorporated Dubuque County. Those properties are a mix of forest land, farmland, and single-family residences. The property to the east is part of the DMASWA landfill and is zoned HI. The requested HI zoning district is an expansion of an existing zone and would allow for the use of sanitary landfill as well as resource recovery and recycling center. The chart below shows the permitted uses in the AG and HI zoning districts. The highlighted items are permitted in both zoning districts. The existing landfill property is zoned HI heavy industrial with conditions. For consistency, the commission may wish to consider adopting the same conditions for the subject property that were requested by Damascus when it was rezoned in 2010. The conditions restricted the permitted and conditionally permitted uses allowed for the property as follows. The permitted uses for this heavy industrial district shall be limited to the following: automated gas station, freight transfer facility, resource recovery recycling center, indoor only, railroad or public or quasi-public utility, including substation, sanitary landfill. The conditional uses for this heavy industrial district shall be limited to the following: wind energy conversion system. As was referred to during the public input session, we received signatures and letters and a petition with 39 signatories opposing the rezoning.
And if I may, I would like to add just a little bit more to that. So there was a question regarding well, first and foremost, I will say that the HIC, heavy industrial condition with conditions zoning district, that exists currently for the landfill site. As you see on the screen before you, and Jason read into the record what those were, the commission can certainly consider alternatives or others specific to the site in light of the conversations, especially around the covenants. I just want to make note that the commission has full flexibility to, approach this one however you see fit, if you see fit to move forward. And then I also want to provide, I'm going to pull up my screen here. In light of the public input, we did create a public input map just to share with the Zoning Advisory Commission. I'm going to go to the large one currently. So there was a question that came up during the public input regarding public notification requirements, and I just want to provide some clarification there as well. With any rezoning, our code, which is our legal document or law that requires us to notify property owners within 200 feet of the property, that area that's being rezoned. So in the image you see here before you, that 200 feet is shown in the area outlined in blue. So that's 200 feet again from the boundary of area being rezoning. So as I understand it, there are some neighbors that, are not within that area, and obviously, in light of that, did not receive input. So that is the reason, or I'm sorry, did not receive notification. So that is the reason why. That is a requirement in our code. We apply that to all rezonings across the board. So we don't get the ability to pick and choose when to apply that requirement or not. And then, so this is kind of the zoomed out area. With any type of rezoning request, we have to evaluate how much, what percentage of landowners within the notification area are potentially in opposition to a project. This directly affects how, what the project might require as far as voting from the city council level. That threshold is 20%. So we look at this notification area, we look at the property owners in opposition to that, and then evaluate that. And again, that just weighs into whether the city council is required to have a supermajority vote or just a majority vote. In this instance, we are looking at about 11.7%, which is below the 20% required for a supermajority vote. So just wanting to point that out for clarification as well. And this map does show all the property owners that signed the petition in red here. So all property owners that have provided opposition input on this matter.
Okay.
So
I had the same question, which
So-
I would have been allowed to ask.
Thank you, Commissioner Lerman. Thank you. Sorry. So we have to look at the land area in that notification boundary, and that percentage is based off the land area in that percentage. So if you look here, again, this dark blue line is the area that of notification, and these red indicate the land area that are property owners in opposition. So that's where the percentage comes from. It's not from your entire property. We're looking at what that land mass is in the notification area. And then that is how that gets calculated per our code requirements.
Can you describe how that changes the supermajority vote in city council then?
So
If
if more
it's over
than, if 20% or more of the property owner, so more than 20, the land area within the boundary is in opposition, then it requires a supermajority vote, which means 6 out of 7 votes at the city council level. In this instance, we are at 11.7%, which would just require a majority of the council.
Okay. All right, guys, we're gonna, I've concluded the public hearing, so we're gonna move on. Is there anything else, Sheena?
I have nothing further to add at this point.
Can you go back to your green map for a minute? Just showing the, boundary. Thank you. I just want to make sure we're all holding our map right. So if you're looking at the, actually, can you do a split screen too?
Yeah.
So that the red boundary we see on the map of Ken's from HDR.
Let's try that again.
Yep. So we've got the vertical and the horizontal, and that is matching to the yellow and the black dotted line. Is that right, Ken? Yep. So lay that out right there. Yep. Okay, thank you. So then the bulk of the purple is going to be to the right of the yellow, correct?
All.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking Sheena is do a very rough layout
Yeah.
on the green map showing how that lays out.
Sure. So approximately as such.
Yep.
Swoops down into this
Yep.
property and then up and over here.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everyone was looking at it the right way.
Crazy.
What? I can do it. You asked her to outline the pink on the other map? Mouse?
There's a notion, Carrie, that
Yeah.
perfect, there you go.
Thank you.
So we're talking about lot 101, which is PIN parcel ID number ending in 003, the first parcel ID noted. And we're getting bungled up saying there's a deed restriction in it, which there is. There is a deed restriction. There is to be no landfill activity, and that's to be worked out between them. That's their deal. But that is not a landfill site. So to the left and the bottom of that red line, there is no landfill activity. The cells are outside of that.
Yeah, so do you have more questions? I'm sorry.
Questions at this point are for staff or for the commission, so.
Yeah, I guess I don't have questions. I do have comments that I want to go in the minutes if that's an option here for the city council and the public, which is, I understand this long-term plan. I think it's good. I understand building landfills and the need. However, I don't want to let that obscure a potential problem that I see here, which is like, if this was not a landfill, and it is restricted to a landfill, would I approve heavy industrial immediately adjacent to these homes' backyard? And why is it even necessary? And sure, they have a, the covenant, you know, they can go to that, but I mean, is what the DMASWA proposing actually fully necessary? I mean, that last application that we saw come here, we saw a lot more opposition to that in the past when it was C1 and then R4, then I voted against it and said it should probably be R3, and they had to come back to R3. It's my view that after listening to all this, that I'm probably going to vote no on the proposal as it's being submitted, because I believe that the property owners there have every right to ask for a zoning buffer, and that might be possible, and, you know, and that's how I'm feeling about it.
Thank you, Carrie. Any other comments? Rich, anything from you? Nothing? Okay, I'll make a motion to rezone the property from agricultural to heavy industrial zoning district as submitted by the applicant. Do we have a second?
I would I would recommend that we include the limitation of the permitted and conditionally permitted uses included in the staff report as part of that motion.
That's good, Rich. I agree with that. Okay.
So that's an amended motion
That
then.
would be an amended motion.
I would second that.
Okay.
Okay, and then,
Jason?
I'm sorry, can we just, I just want to clarify it for the record. So we're, the amended motion is to outline essentially the same that's currently with the rest of the landfill site, which would limit the permitted uses to automated gas station, freight transfer facility, resource recovery recycling center, indoor only, railroad and quasi, or public or quasi-public utility, including substation and sanitary landfill. And then conditional uses would include the wind energy conservation system.
Items 1 and 2 entirely.
Correct.
Thank you.
So that would be an amended motion by Rich, or was that by me?
It was by you.
That was by me.
Okay.
Seconded by Rich. Got that, Jason?
Russell,
Aye.
Christ,
Aye.
Lorman,
Nay.
Mulligan.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes. It'll go before City Council on May the 19th.
And if I could, just as we, as with the previous rezoning request, there is opportunity for public input, as well as any public input that was provided here this evening and given to the Zoning Advisory Commission will most certainly be conveyed, including the petition, to the City Council for their consideration of this request.
Thank you, Sheena. Okay, that concludes.
You, additional information. Sure, so I apologize for that. Additional public input may certainly be provided, yes, sir. Yeah.
Written opposition, correct?
Yes, correct. Within that land area, correct. And we can certainly, we are happy to chat with you about that in great detail. We can sit down and take a look at that, absolutely. Yep. Yep. So I would be happy to chat with you a little more after this meeting too, if you'd like to discuss any of those details, Carrie. We can do that.
All right, I'm going to wrap up our public hearings. We're going to move on. Any items from the public this evening? Okay. Items from the commission?
I do have one that came up at the last council meeting that I attended. One of the council members asked me why somebody voted no, and I couldn't remember who voted no in the first place, and so I certainly didn't remember why. So I'm wondering if there's a way in the minutes to include exceptions, at least to the voting. So if it was like tonight, 3-1, would you be able to note that Carrie voted no?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
that the council knows that?
Yeah, so the minutes do reflect the vote. They do reflect so there is a memo that goes to the city council, and then there's also a copy of the minutes, the draft minutes that go. And that does include a detailed summary of the conversation. It includes the comments from each specific commissioner, and it also includes who voted no. So we can certainly make sure that prior to any future city council meetings, that you have a copy of that detailed. And if I could also just add, this is a great example of why it is very important for the commission to articulate when they are for or in opposition and the reasons why. That's always very helpful as to when we get to the city council level to have that information for them to consider in their review.
So normally we don't see the minutes until the next month, but the city council meeting is before that, so you're just
Yes.
offering to provide us with that before the city
Yeah,
council
so we
meeting.
create a memo, which is a summary. We prepare draft minutes almost immediately after the zoning advisory commission meetings. And the city council does get a copy of those draft minutes. They're just not formally adopted until they come back to the zoning advisory commission.
And when are they available to the public?
Once they're formally approved. They are part of the city council packet, so I would anticipate you could see a draft version of that as well. But they do not get published on the city's website until this commission has said, yes, this accurately reflects the discussions that we had.
But they're available to the city council members themselves, but not to the public yet.
Yes, correct. Yes, I apologize. Yes, that's correct. Yep. And that's just because of the timing. So city council meetings are usually before we get back, we reconvene as a commission. So for example, the May 19th meeting is in about 2 weeks. And then obviously we don't reconvene until the beginning of June.
So even though they aren't available to the public, the city council will see like my comments that should go into the meeting minutes, and the neighbors speaking there can always refer to what they heard here.
Right. And I was going to only add, and I see Wally at the podium, but that our meetings are also recorded. That is all public information. So anyone can listen to the meetings at any point in time. Procedurally, we just don't formally adopt the minutes until the commission takes action to do so. So, and Wally.
Yeah, just to reiterate, so the minutes are in draft form. They are part of the city council packet. That is public information that is available to the public when all the documents become available the Friday before the city council meeting. Typically with minutes, they typically get approved, not zoning advisory commission, but other boards and commissions. But due to the time frame, the turnaround, we go through and prepare those draft minutes, and they become part of the packet of information. They do receive that, and then as what Sheena has indicated, this meeting is actually recorded. So it is available to the public. That typically becomes available within the next couple of days after this meeting. Some council members pull that up and watch the meeting. So there's information out there with regards to it. So at those meetings, I present, and the questions do get brought up sometimes. Sometimes the question gets brought up, I think sometimes on purpose by a council member, just to kind of reiterate those conversations. And that's why we request like the chairperson be present, because sometimes they do have that question of the commission of why someone may or may not be able to explain that. I would have been able to explain that, but unfortunately it was not addressed to me at the time, and I get limited time to be able to talk about it. Otherwise I would have indicated, Commissioner Lorman was opposed to it. She wanted to reduce the density discussion with that, which was what you were approaching at the last
His
meeting.
question about the last one, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
Very good. Okay. Items from staff. Looks like we've got a goal setting session.
Yeah, we do. Well, I don't know if you want to stay, but we'll dive into it. So every year the city council does a goal setting exercise, and so that does include involvement with city staff, but also includes and request input from our commissions and boards. And so this is the time of year where we're looking to do that. So I have included in here, there are two worksheets, if you will, that they request. So one is we're looking at, and so tonight we're looking for feedback from the commission. We've taken a draft at what we think to be some successes from the last fiscal year, and have summarized those here. And sometimes those tend to be kind of standard from previous years. So certainly look for input if there's things that we haven't highlighted or noted in this document. So that's the first document you're seeing here. This is, again, looking to identify successes and impacts. Those specifically align with our city council goals with respect to, for example, financially responsible, high-performance city organizations. So we have other goals in there that we may have things that align with as well. And then the second part of this is really what we think will be projects or issues that we'd like to look at for the next fiscal year. And so we've obviously highlighted here that the Zoning Advisory Commission is going to play a key role in our updates to our Unified Development Code, which we are currently in the midst of. We have a technical report that will be online soon. And then we'll obviously continue to have more detailed conversations as we roll through updates to the specific sections of our code. And so, yeah, generally we're looking for any feedback or input that you have regarding these two worksheets this evening.
On the second item?
Yes.
Is the future land use plan part of the Unified Development Code?
So the future land use plan is part of the city's comprehensive plan. So that is not part of what we're looking at updating it. I see Wally coming back up. That is something that we could potentially, we would look at, and Wally, go ahead. I know where you're going, but I'll let you take it away.
You most definitely could request that as being one of the goals come from the Zoning Advisory Commission. Jason Duba and I work with the Long Range Planning Advisory Commission. We are looking at a detailed land use update or analysis and update of that future land use map. We've already done quite a bit of that. And with the sanitary sewer asset management plan, as we look at our future growth in our area, there's been a lot of discussion with the engineering department identifying some of those future land uses located on that. So there will be an update with regards to the future land use map. And then the other thing that's being discussed, what we'll be doing here shortly, will be an extremely detailed, very, very detailed downtown land use analysis. Basically looking at the makeup of all of our buildings, what the uses are on there, what's vacant, because they are looking at opportunities where we can do some analysis, maybe create some incentives to encourage some downtown housing, especially with the new college campus that's going to be located in the Prudential Building, and then also just encouraging higher density development and the need for housing in our community. The future land use map will probably not be part of the Unified Development Code, since that's just strictly related primarily to the Unified Development Code with subdivision and historic preservation and our zoning ordinance. But we are definitely actively working on that, and that's something that Jason and I have been working over the past year on. Specifically, we've already met with the county and some other stakeholders with regards to that future land use map. We'll definitely be bringing that here before you guys to get your input, and then take it to the Long Range Planning Advisory Commission, City Council for formal adoption. It's a long-winded answer. So I encourage you to put down, yes, update future land use map.
I have it here in my notes.
Is that something that would be appropriate for us to provide input, or is it more the Long Range Planning Commission?
It is, so we're very unique in the state of Iowa. Most communities have a planning and zoning commission. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, that decision was to split the long-range planning from the zoning commission. That's why we have two different commissions. So I still think it's highly appropriate to come from you as well as the long-range planning advisory commission. The more input that we get from our boards and commissions and more requests from that, all this information gets compiled and it goes before the city council for their consideration. And like we've indicated, this is something that staff is also looking or currently working on. But by going to the city council and identifying that, helps provide some additional resources that might be available through funding to do some more analysis or anything associated with that. So.
Great. Thanks, Wally. Good.
Is there any
So
other?
we owe you these items.
Well-
Are you putting us on
well,
the spot right now?
I am. However, if you have any follow-up, please feel free to just reach out to staff and we can certainly include it after the fact.
Okay. What is our drop dead date on that?
We would want to have that by, I'm looking at Wally again, early June, late May? Next couple
Before,
weeks?
yeah, May 15th.
Yeah, those sessions begin in early June, right? Yeah.
We
Okay.
have to have it all compiled into the firm that's working on the goal setting with them by the 19th, I believe.
Oh, this one. Okay. We can send a follow-up email if need be as well.
Great.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else? From staff?
That is all I have from staff. Okay. Yep, that's all I have. I don't know.
All right, gang.
Mr. Chair,
Well done.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.